Picture this, a room buzzing with excitement, fans packed shoulder to shoulder, all waiting for a trip down memory lane with stories of rock and roll glory. They're expecting laughs, maybe some nostalgic tales about the good old days of the Police. But then, Stewart Copeland, that wild, unstoppable drummer, steps up and flips the script. No warm fuzzies, no sugarcoating, just raw, unfiltered truth about tension, conflict. And a side of his bandmate Andy Summers you've never heard before. This isn't just another band story. It's a deep dive into the hidden struggles behind one of the biggest rock bands ever. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around until the very end for the full scoop. It's a wild ride you won't believe. Now, let's set the stage. The Police weren't just any band. They were a global phenomenon, cranking out hits like Roxanne, Message in a Bottle, and Every Breath You Take. Their sound was edgy, their performances electric. And their chemistry? Well, that's where things get messy. Most fans know about the fiery clashes between Stewart Copeland and Sting too. Larger-than-life personalities butting heads over everything. But what about Andy Summers, the guitarist? He's always been seen as the calm one, the steady hand keeping things together. Or so we thought. Copeland's recent revelations pull back the curtain, and let me tell you, Andy's story is way more complicated than anyone imagined. There's tension, frustration, and a whole lot of untold drama. So let's dive in and uncover what really went down behind the music. First, let's talk about Andy Summers himself. The guy was a guitar wizard, no question. His riffs gave the Police their signature sound. Think of that haunting, unforgettable guitar line in Every Breath You Take. It's iconic, right? But Andy wasn't just some quiet guy strumming in the background. According to Copeland, Andy had his own battles, and they were just as intense as the ones between Copeland and Sting. The big surprise? A lot of that tension was with Copeland himself. Fans always assumed Andy was the peacemaker, the one staying out of the drama. But behind closed doors, he was fighting for control, recognition, and his own vision for the band. It's like finding out the quiet kid in class was secretly stirring up just as much trouble as the loud one's dot. So what was the deal between Andy and Stewart? It all boiled down to creative differences, and boy, were they different. Copeland was all about raw, unfiltered energy. He wanted the music to feel alive, spontaneous, like it could explode at any moment. Andy, on the other hand, was a perfectionist. He'd spend hours tweaking a single guitar riff, making sure every note was just right. Imagine a late-night recording session, everyone's exhausted, ready to call it a day, but Andy's still there, insisting on one more take. For him, it was about precision. For Copeland, it was like watching the soul of the music get sucked out. That clash wasn't just about guitar parts or drum beats, it was about who got to steer the ship. And neither of them was big on compromising. Let's zoom in on one of the band's biggest hits to really get the picture. Every Breath You Take is one of those songs that defines an era. You hear it and you're instantly transported back. Sting wrote the lyrics and got most of the credit. But that unforgettable guitar riff? That was all Andy Summers. It's the backbone of the song, the thing that makes it timeless. But here's the kicker. Andy didn't get the recognition he felt he deserved. Sting was out front, soaking up the spotlight as the charismatic frontman, while Andy's massive contribution was often overlooked. Copeland says this ate at Andy. Imagine pouring your heart into something only to watch someone else get all the praise. That frustration wasn't just about one song, it was a pattern. Andy wanted his voice to be heard, but in a band with Sting's charm and Copeland's fiery personality, he often felt drowned out. Now, don't get me wrong, the Police made magic together. Their music is still played everywhere, from radio stations to your favorite playlist. But that magic came at a cost. Behind every hit was a battle. Copeland describes recording sessions where tempers flared, egos clashed, and the air was thick with tension. Andy's perfectionism didn't just bug Copeland, it sometimes slowed the whole process down. There were moments when the band was on the verge of something great, but Andy's need for everything to be flawless could kill the vibe. Copeland felt like the band's spontaneity, the thing that made them so special, was getting lost. And Andy? He probably felt like he was just trying to make the music as good as it could be. It's like they were speaking different languages, both wanting the best for the band but pulling in opposite directions. Let's take a step back and think about what it must have been like to be Andy Summers in those days. On stage, he's a rock god playing to sold-out crowds, living the dream. But off stage, he's a guy dealing with some heavy stuff. Fame looks glamorous, but it's a grind. The Police were huge, which meant constant touring, endless recording sessions, and barely any time to breathe. For Andy, that meant being away from his family for months at a time. He was married to Kate McGill back then, and they had a kid together. Trying to balance being a husband, a dad, and a rock star was like juggling fire. You can probably picture it. Andy comes home after a grueling tour, hoping to reconnect with his family, only to get called back to the studio before he's even unpacked. That kind of life takes a toll. Andy's marriage started to crack under the pressure. Late nights in the studio, weeks on the road, and his obsession with getting the music just right left little room for anything else. Kate and their daughter were living a life that Andy was barely part of. It's heartbreaking when you think about it, a guy at the peak of his career, adored by millions, but feeling more and more disconnected from the people who matter most. Copeland says Andy tried to hold it all together. He loved his family and his music, but the demands of being in the police were relentless. Something had to give, and eventually it did. Andy's marriage ended in divorce. It wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was a moment that forced him to question everything. Was chasing perfection in his music worth losing the life he'd build at home? Here's where Andy's story gets even more real. Divorce is tough for anyone, but for Andy it was like a wake-up call he couldn't ignore. He was still a star, still playing those incredible riffs, but inside he was wrestling with a sense of loss. The guy who could make a guitar sing was struggling to find balance in his own life. And it wasn't just his personal life that was shaky. The tension with Copeland and the constant shadow of Sting's fame were always there, nagging at him. It's like Andy was fighting on multiple fronts, with his bandmates, with his family, and with himself. Yet, through it all, he kept showing up, pouring everything he had into the music. That's the kind of resilience that makes his story so compelling. Fast forward to 1986, when the Police called it quits. For most bands, breaking up is the end of the drama, right? Not for Andy Summers. The end of the Police was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance for him to step out of the chaos and into something new. He dove into a solo career, exploring jazz and experimental music stuff that was totally different from the rock anthems he'd played with the Police. It was a bold move, and critics loved it. His solo albums were packed with technical skill and creativity. But here's the thing. Andy's perfectionism followed him. The same traits that caused friction in the Police started showing up in his solo work. And not everyone was thrilled about it. Imagine Andy in the studio, working on a new track. He's got a vision, and he's not budging until it's perfect. His collaborators are talented musicians, but they're getting frustrated because Andy's pushing for changes long after they think the song is done. That dedication to his craft was what made him so good, but it also made him tough to work with. Some musicians started whispering that Andy was difficult, uncompromising, even demanding. It's like he couldn't turn off that need for control. And it cost him. Collaborations that started with big promises often ended in tension, with people quietly stepping away or openly complaining. Andy's pursuit of perfection was his superpower, but it was also his Achilles heel. One of the most talked about examples is Andy's collaboration with Robert Fripp, another guitar legend. On paper, it was a dream team, two virtuosos pushing the boundaries of what a guitar could do. They created some seriously cool music, blending progressive rock with avant-garde jazz. For a moment, it seemed like they were onto something huge. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart. Fripp was just as strong-willed as Andy, and neither of them was big on backing down. They clashed over creative control, each wanting to shape the project their way. It's like watching two chefs trying to cook the same dish but fighting over every ingredient. The partnership didn't last, and what could have been a game-changing collaboration fizzled out. For Andy, it was another reminder that brilliance doesn't always play nice with others. By this point, you might be thinking, man, A's got a lot going on, and you're right. His post-Police years weren't the triumphant reinvention he might have hoped for. Sure, he was still making music, still earning respect from critics, but the struggles kept piling up. The whispers about him being hard to work with grew louder, and his reputation as a perfectionist started to overshadow his talent. It's like he was carrying the weight of his past to those fights with Copeland, the divorce, the feeling of being overlooked, and the Police. Every new project was a chance to prove himself, but it was also a reminder of how hard it was to escape the ghosts of his old life. Despite all that, Andy never gave up. That's what makes his story so powerful. He kept pushing forward, driven by this deep need to create something meaningful. Every album, every collaboration, every note he played was proof of his resilience, but it wasn't easy. Copeland's revelations make it clear that Andy's journey was lonely at times. He wasn't just fighting to be heard in the music world. He was fighting to prove he was more than just the guitarist from the Police. That fight became his legacy, a mix of incredible talent, personal sacrifice, and a relentless drive. That both lifted him up and held him back. So what's the big takeaway from all this? Andy Summers wasn't just the quiet guy in the background. He was a complex, driven, sometimes conflicted artist who helped create some of the greatest music of all time. His story is about more than just rock and roll. It's about the cost of chasing perfection, the toll of fame, and the strength it takes to keep going when everything feels like it's falling apart. Copeland's revelations have given us a new lens on Andy's life, showing us a side of him that's raw, real, and deeply human. It's a reminder that even the legends we admire are fighting battles we might never see as you listen to those. Classic Police songs think about Andy Summers not just the guitarist, but the man behind the riffs. The guy who poured his soul into every note even when it cost him. His story is still echoing in the music he helped create, a story of brilliance, struggle, and everything in between. And that's why you've got to stick with me to the end of this video. It's not just about the music. It's about the heart and soul of a man who gave everything to it. If you loved hearing this untold story, hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. Let's keep uncovering the real stories behind the legends. See you in the next one.